Ah, hey guys, welcome back to another amazing, flavorful episode of Life in Life. Life in Life is a YouTube channel that focuses on curious and meaningful conversations that help us to understand more about life and, in essence, be able to have knowledge that helps us to make decisions that compound well in the long term. So, if you haven't checked out the previous episodes, please do so. They're quite riveting, and we're going through a series of information. And today, in episode 8, we're going to be talking about the 5 life lessons that I've learned in 2022. So stay tuned for that. Just before we begin, a little housekeeping. The reason why, first of all, I have to apologize. I have to apologize because there's an episode that I was supposed to release last week. I was not able to do that. I had a cold. I was not able to shoot. So I'm so sorry, guys. I'm sorry for delaying this goodness, this amazing, amazing value from you. And now we are recording it. So I'm very excited. I still have a little bit of a cold. So whenever I am clearing my throat, please bear with me. Okay, so without further ado, let's begin. Let's get into it. So, the 5 life lessons that I've learned in 2022. When I was coming up with this particular topic, I was very curious to understand why do I want to share life lessons and why is it in 2022. So the reason why I feel and I think that 2022 is very fundamental for me, or very foundational, is because I've come across certain teachers who have really educated me in the aspect of life. So one thing about my personality is I love consuming new information. I love consuming new information about life, about different fields. And once I'm on a path, I just go with that path to the ends of the earth. So I love finding out new information. I love digging for new information. And whenever I come across teachers or philosophers or doctors or whoever it is that is sharing information that I feel is new, is valuable, and is very meaningful for me, I love sharing that with my friends and my audience, and it's primarily why I came up with this YouTube channel. So that being said, in 2022, I came across very foundational trainers or teachers or philosophers, one of which is Jordan B. Peterson and also Alain de Botton. So, oh yes. There's another one. I'm going to talk about her when it comes to romantics. But for the time being, I want to talk about these 2 philosophers and what I've learned from them, and also what I've learned from my own experience. I feel like 2022 has really given me time to be self-aware, to just find out more about myself. It's one of the advantages of being single. You have so much time to think about your life, to think about where you want to go, where you're coming from, to unpack different things from your history, to look forward and look back, in essence. So there are 5 fundamental life lessons that I've come to learn in 2022 that I'd really love to share, and I have been already sharing them with my friends and family from time to time, just hammering in a point and another. So we're going to begin. The first point is life is suffering. Oh my goodness, life is suffering. If there was one term that would summarize life for me, is that life is suffering. Life is suffering. And the reason I say this is because life in itself is very complex. It's very hard to understand. Life in itself is very variable. So there are things that might be working for someone else and they're not working for you. Life in itself is very broad. There are so many avenues. There are so many things. There are so many hierarchies. There are so many people and complexities that come with people. So life in itself is difficult. It's limiting for us as human beings. It's quite wide. It's quite complex. It's quite just a mix of everything that is meant that is going to just like make your brain fry. So it's very well understood that even when we come to the end of life as human beings, there are certain things that we'll never have experienced, There are so many other things we'll never have gotten, never have achieved, never have seen, never have had. So there's so much more to life than we are ever going to experience. And there's this limitation, there's this heaviness, there's this unfairness of life, there's this complexity of life that we can't quite unpack. You get? So even starting from the times when the Bible was recorded, or when the Bible refers to the beginning of time. It's like, so there was God, there was this big being that was responsible for the whole universe, and then this particular being created the first set of human beings and put them in a certain environment that was like perfection. It was utopian. And then there was a cataclysmic event that happened. And now the rest of the Bible and the rest of our lives have been sort of working back up to the good graces that we had with this being before the cataclysmic event. So, in essence, the cataclysmic event in the context of the Bible is when we ate the fruit and then, boom, the first sin, right? But in essence, for me, my understanding of the cataclysmic event is when human beings achieved consciousness, when we were able to know that you're conscious beings. And just in case you don't know what I mean by consciousness, go back to episode 7. We talked about consciousness, the discovery of consciousness, so check it out. So for me, I think that is what was the cataclysmic event. When we realized the weight of existence, and I talked about this in episode 2, the weight of existence, that us as human beings, we know and we bear the weight of the sinful nature that we have to be in order for us to survive. And we talked about how a dog can kill an animal, or a cat can kill a rat and eat it and not feel guilty for taking away the rat's life. But for us as human beings, we feel guilty for taking away that goat's life or that cow's life so that we can eat it and live. So we feel a certain weight of existence within ourselves, and that also is closely tied to the fact that we know we are going to die. I don't think there are other animals that know they are going to die, so we know at a certain time and age we're going to pass on, and this in itself also adds to the pressure of being human. So this is what I call the weight of existence. So we as human beings, we have the weight of existence, and that coupled up with the complexity of life just makes life suffering. Life is suffering, man. That is the SI unit of life. I have tried to find different things to define life. I have tried to find different aspects or different measurements of life, and what I have come to understand is that life is suffering. And this is also something that Jordan B. Peterson talks about, that life is suffering. And if we knew that, if we were told that, then there would be so much pain and so much confusion that would be removed from our lives, because we come into this world thinking that it's fair, thinking that it's supposed to be good, thinking that it's supposed to be all roses and sunshine, and then we end up finding out that this work is sweat, this work is blood and tears, this life is blood, sweat, and tears. We come into this life and we realize that you've got to work, you've got to wake up every morning, and you've got to go out there and you've got to suffer and come back and still remain within the bounds of your suffering. And that it was so mind-blowing for me to realize that. Not only that, but it was also very freeing. It was very freeing for me to understand that life is suffering, because at least that sort of makes sense of all the things that don't make sense around you. Like, why are so many people dying? Why do people who are good have bad things happen to them? Why are people who are bad have good things happening to them? There's an imbalance. There's an unfairness to life. And once you understand that life in itself is suffering, then there's so much pressure and stress that is taken off you of being perfection itself, and also of demanding perfection from other people. Not only that, but you're also able to understand that not everything is going to be enjoyable, and that's okay. That life was not meant to be enjoyable from A to Z. There's going to be suffering, right? And when people say that life doesn't have meaning, what they really say is that I am suffering miserably and I don't know what to do about it. So, in essence, then, just to give you, again, to segue a little bit and just give you an idea of what I mean by suffering. When a gazelle or an antelope wakes up in the morning and it's in the savannah and it wants to eat, what does it do? It just walks to the nearest green patch of grass and starts to feed, right? But what happens when a human being is brought into the world and needs to feed? So, first of all, you need to go to school to understand how you can communicate with other human beings and how you can be able to become a productive member of the workforce. Number two, after you're done with like almost 2 or so decades of school, you need to go to work. So you need to wake up every single morning and go to work and toil and do something that you'd not be doing unless you're getting paid, just so that you get money to go and buy food so that you can eat. So the process of acquiring food for other animals or wild animals, as compared to us as human beings, our process is so long. You think about that. You think about how your parents had to invest so that you can go to school, so that you can learn, so that you can get a job, so that you can be able to earn some income that will sustain you, that will sustain those you care about, that will sustain those that will come after you. So essentially, there's this long path for human beings, there's this short path for other animals, right? So if you think about gazelles don't need to know or to articulate their English. I mean, they're not somewhere thinking, oh my God, there's a cat tomorrow. No. Lions don't sit down and they're like, oh my God, I didn't submit my assignment. No, they don't give a hoot about that. Why? Because for them, the dynamics of life are a little bit different. So that in itself makes us jump through so many hoops for us to get to a point of, here is food that you can now eat. Do you get that? So it's quite a perspective to have, and number two, it's quite the understanding to have as well. And not only that, now let's move back into suffering. So if life is suffering, what should we do about it? The thing about life, and the thing I have learned about life this year is, again, two things. If it's suffering, then number one, try to remove as much suffering as possible as you can for yourself. The more suffering you've removed, the better for you, okay? And when you're talking about suffering, you're talking about things like the art of repetition. You get bored going to work, doing the same thing over and over and over and over again, every day, every week, every month, every year, over and over again, okay? So there's already that constriction to boredom in the procedures of how we run about life, okay? The boredom of routine, that in itself is a whole level of suffering that we don't even talk about. The other thing is, not only do you go through the art of boredom, you also get sick, you also get hurt, you feel pain, you are afraid, you have limiting beliefs. There are so many things that make life limiting and painful and suffering for us. So one of the ways that you can actually make this work for you is by finding ways to elevate suffering, finding ways to reduce the amount of suffering that you're going to go through, or that the people that you care about are going to go through. And one of those ways is by planning ahead. And that's why we have this particular YouTube channel. The purpose of this channel is for us to have a repository of knowledge and information that can help us to make decisions that compound well in the future. So you might be asking yourself, so what is a decision that compounds well in the future for me? And I talked about that in episode 1 and episode 2, the purpose of this channel. But now let's unpack that idea of what would be a decision that compounds well for me in the future. And from my standpoint, right now as Jonathan Thuo, I think that a decision that would compound well for you in the future is a decision that elevates suffering in your future years, or elevates suffering in the future years of those you care about, okay? So for example, if as an individual, you decide to start, let's say you're a 20-something-year-old individual and you decide to start a saving fund for, let's say, your future kids' education, right? So you don't have kids, you don't have a wife, you don't have a husband, you don't have anyone you're dating, but you've decided, you know what, I'm going to keep aside a small amount of this money that I make just to cater for that time when I'll have those kids who will be going to that school and I'll need to pay for it. It's an expense I can anticipate that is going to come because I want kids, and hopefully I pray to God that I'm going to get them. But I need to prepare for an expense that will come in the future that is related to this dream and goal that I want. Yeah. And so the way that I'm going to prepare for it is by setting something aside now. So that in itself, I think, is a decision that compounds well in the future, because in the future, this money that you've saved is going to get you out from certain school fees stress. Okay? So you have reduced suffering for yourself in the future by acting now. Another example. It's fairly evident that most of us, if not all of us, are going to get sick or something, some sense of ailment in our future, either when we get old, or maybe 2 days from now, maybe 1 week from now, maybe 1 month from now. We don't know, God forbid. But it's fairly evident, say, that for most of us, we're going to get sick. Either it's flu, either it's a cough, either it's back pain. There's just going to be something that is going to warrant you to need medical services. And so, now that we know that at a certain point in our lives, we might get sick, again, the weight of existence, we know we're going to die. So we know we're going to get sick, we know we're going to die, and someone is going to be responsible for taking care of our bodies after we've left this beautiful earth. So how are we preparing for that? Are we, say, putting aside some funds for medical cover? Are we, say, putting some funds aside for a rainy day? Are we, say, taking on life insurance so that when we pass, the people who will take care of us have some level of assistance or help to that? You get that? So sometimes the suffering that you're going to elevate is not going to be just for us, it's going to be for other people. And that is one of the things that is going to make the suffering we go through noble. And so what then should you do with a life that is suffering? What you should do is you should find the baseline of suffering, which is very high. The baseline of suffering is a high. So you find the baseline of suffering, you take that suffering and you say, okay, so I'm going to go to work every day for 40 days to do this job, to work with people that I might not necessarily like, to earn an income so that I can sustain a family, I can raise up my kids in a way that they'll be able to sustain themselves in the future. Okay? So you're going to work, you're going to suffer for the sake of someone else, your kids. And think about it. Our parents have done that for the longest time. They've woken up every day, they've gone to work every day, they've toiled in environments that they don't like, with people that they don't enjoy, and they have been able to come up with some certain level of returns that has enabled us to propel our lives to going to school, to getting food to eat, to a point where now we are able to sustain ourselves. So essentially, they have sacrificed for us, and their sacrifice bears meaning because it was done out of love. You get that? So sacrifice in itself, we talked about sacrifice again when you're talking about Noah. I think it was episode 5 or 6. Yeah, when you talked about sacrifice. So you're making a deal with the universe, quote unquote. You're making a deal with the universe that I'm going to sacrifice, I'm going to give up this thing that is of meaning to me now for an eventuality that is much better. So I'm going to sacrifice this money that I would have bought a house with, or I would have bought a car or a vacation with, and I'm going to put that into my child's tuition so that they can be able to get a good education, they can be able to get a good array of opportunities, and they can be able to sustain themselves in the future. Sacrifice. So sacrifice makes sense when we do it for other people, and that in itself gives suffering meaning. So what you are looking to do with life is not remove all the suffering from it, but give the suffering that you're going to go through some level of meaning, some level of I'm doing this because of ABCD, and ABCD makes me feel like going to encounter this suffering every day is going to be worth it. My kids are going to make me feel like going to work every day to deal with this boss that just makes the hair at the back of my neck raise up. The fact that I'm going to suffer enough to deal with this boss 8 hours a day, 5 days a week, 50 whatever weeks a year, I'm going to deal with this suffering, and I'm going to take it on for the sake of my kids. That is giving your life, that is giving suffering meaning. And at the end of it, suffering is going to get meaning out of creating order out of chaos. And number 2, sacrificing for other people. So the goal of life in itself is suffering. That is the first point. And the goal is not to remove all the suffering from life, because you cannot be able to do that. You can reduce the suffering, but you cannot remove it completely. So then how do you go about handling the suffering that is in your life? By making it meaningful. Make it meaningful. If you loathe going to school every single day, but you need to go there so that you get certain skills that will enable you to take care of the people that you love, the people that matter to you, the people that you care about, then it means that you have given that suffering meaning. And you'll be able to carry it on, because you know that the meaning that this suffering, the meaning that you're creating out of this suffering is greater than the suffering itself. So find the baseline of suffering and then do something that justifies you going through that suffering. That is the first point. The second point, or the second lesson I've learned about life in 2022 is that happiness does not come from achievement, it comes from engagement. Let me break that down. So we have been raised in an environment that is a junkie on achievement. Like, go out there, do everything you can. You can achieve anything you put your mind to. You can become the next Elon Musk, the next Bill Gates. You can become the next big thing, right? And that's all we aspire to be. We aspire to achieve that status of the next big thing, the richest person, the top of the pyramid sort of thing, right? But the interesting thing to learn about achievement and goals is that once you achieve a goal, the next thing that you're going to do is set up another goal to achieve, right? Why? Because when you achieve a goal, that creates some dopamine in you, and dopamine is a feel-good drug, right? So what happens with dopamine is dopamine creates its own demand. So the more dopamine you produce, the more dopamine you'll want. And this is why when you set one small task or one small goal or one small achievement and you hit it, you instantly have a certain excitement to achieve other things. So for example, if you've always said that you want to start running and you finally start running, you find that you having achieved that goal of going for a run motivates you to do other things like clean up your house, to eat a better diet food, or to eat a better meal or healthily. It will also inspire you to sleep better or to sleep more, to sleep at a more agreeable time, and to wake up at a more agreeable time. It will push you to maybe even want to go now to the gym to lift the weights or to do cardio. Like, the achievement of one goal is going to motivate you to go to other goals. And not only that, think about it. The worst part about running a script or a game to its end or to its tail end is that now you have to come up with a new game and start playing it. So that's the thing about goal achievement. That's the thing about achievement. The more you achieve, the more you'll want to achieve, and there'll always be another goal that you'll set after you've achieved the goal that you're pursuing right now. Then what makes us happy? And this has been a really curious point for me to try and unpack, or to try and understand what makes us happy. Because number one, you've noticed that by the time you're getting to adulthood, that happiness is not constant. Happiness comes in fluctuations. It goes up, it comes down. But in essence, think about or think back to when you are the happiest. And for me, when I can say I was the happiest is when I was spending time either with my friends or my family. It was either those two, my friends or my family. And let me give you a slight example. So when I was in high school, I felt that high school was just the pits. High school was the pits for me. Yani, high school was one of those places that you go to, and by the time you leave, you're like, if I survived this, there's nothing in life I can't survive. Bring me Nairobi, I will survive that Nairobi, you know? So, what I used to love so much about high school was at the end of every year we used to go during Christmas period. We used to go to a rural place, and then we'd meet all our cousins, all the nephews. You'd have food, you'd meet your aunts, your uncles, people you haven't seen for a whole year. You'd interact with them, you'd engage with them, your relatives, and you'd have such a good time. It would be amazing just spending time with these people. And it's the conversations that you have, it's that closeness, that connection, those jokes that you make, the new adventures that you go on. These are the things that you remember throughout the year. That, oh my god, I can remember my cousin saying, this guy is mad, why would he? I remember this guy going to the forest and chasing after an like, why would you? You know. So this were the things that made life for me happy, that made me happy in my own life and made life for me enjoyable. Going back to these moments when you spend with family, when you'd spend with your friends, even with my friends, if I would look to 2022, the best times, the times that I've laughed the loudest, the times that I was the most myself I could be, the times that I was the happiest, was when I was spending time with friends, whether that was at sherehe, whether that was in celebration of something, whether we were just seated somewhere at work and just having conversations that made us happy, right? So the essence of happiness was brought about by engagement, not by me achieving goals. Okay, you're going to achieve goals, you're going to feel that dopamine. You're going to feel that dopaminogenic effect. And it's going to make you feel like, oh God, I feel good, I feel sort of happy. But that in itself is not happiness, because once you have achieved that particular goal and you settle there, after some time you're going to start feeling some sort of either blandness, or you're going to feel some resentment. So for example, if you go to university and one of your goals is to graduate, so when you go and you graduate and now you're at the top of the university hierarchy on one day, and then the next day you're at the bottom of the workforce pyramid or hierarchy, you know, and you decide that, you know what, I'm not going to work. I have achieved it. I have reached my goal. I have graduated. Here's my doctorate. Here's my certificate. What do I need? What more do I need? I have a degree. What more do I need? I'm not going to do anything else. Trust you me, 10 years from that point, you're going to be resenting yourself, because you're like, I never did anything with this. I never moved from this point. Why? Because when you achieve one goal, your life is going to pull you to set another goal and to go towards it and to achieve it and then set another. So it's like a game. You run this game or you play this game to the end. Once you're done with that game, you need to now come up with another game and start playing it. So that in itself is a cyclical nature of life. So if you hinge happiness to the achievement of goals, number one, it's going to be such a bland thing, because these things that you achieve, they are not you. And we talked about this in the previous episode when you're trying to unpack who are we really. And we are not our material possessions. We are not our piece of land. You are not your car. You are not your wallet. You are not your couch. You are not your phone. Those are things that you say own for this time and point in existence. Those are just materialistic things that are around you to make your life easier, but they are not you. You might attach some sense of self to them by saying, this is my phone, this is my house, this is my car. You take a piece of yourself and you attach it to that thing, but it doesn't mean that that thing is you. Okay, so even when you achieve these things, that degree is not you. Okay, that doctorate is not you, that new job is not you, that new car is not you. So in itself, you're going to get to a point where you get tired or you get so used to this thing that it no longer brings you happiness. Okay, so then what will bring you happiness? And from what I have gathered so far with my very short years here on this planet, is that happiness comes from engagement. When you spend time with those that you care about, when you spend time with those that you love, when you spend time with those that matter to you, and you have those conversations and you create those memories, I think that is what makes happiness. Um, the third lesson number 3, is no one will schedule your self-care apart from you. No one is going to schedule your breaks. No one is going to prioritize you time apart from you, because everyone else has their own life. Everyone else has their own responsibilities. Everyone else has things that they need. They have things that they need to do, right? They have their own schedule. They have their own agendas. They have their own interests. And so you cannot wait for your boss to tell you that, hey, you have been working so hard. Why don't you go take a nap, right? You have been working extremely hard. I think you deserve to go and just sleep. Just go take a nap over there, you know. No one is going to prioritize self-care and taking breaks for you. So if you do not create time for you to do that specifically, you're going to find people who are going to give you requests that these requests are going to take away all the time that you would have taken to take care of yourself. Okay, so for example, if you say that, you know what, me, I'm flexible any day, every day you can get me, then what happens when everyone has come to you and they've asked for your time, and now your schedule is full from Sunday to Sunday, you don't even have an hour to yourself? What is going to happen when you are booked from Monday to Monday? You don't even have a Saturday afternoon to yourself. You don't have a Sunday afternoon to yourself. You don't have a skincare period or time for you to take care of your health, for you to take care of your skin, for you to take care of your mental health, for you to take care of your emotional health, for you to take care of your spiritual health and your financial health. You don't have time for you because everyone else has their own agenda and they are prioritizing their own needs, and whatever they need from you, they're going to ask from you unless you say no. One of the things people are going to ask from you is your time. I'd love to spend time with you. I'd love to come visit you. I'd love for you